Hey guys, good afternoon. Let's get started. So Qt components deep dive. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. I am Ruben Rincon. I work for Nokia in the Silicon Valley office. Been working with programming for mobile about 8 years, and 5 of those 8 years were, like doing some hardcore programming. That's like programming with one hand and the other one eating a sandwich at 3 in the morning. You may know that. And the last 3 years, I have been working for Nokia, providing specialized technical support to developers who have some technical difficulties, so I help them to overcome the issues they have. What we will cover today is we will try to go deeper into what Qt components are. So I just want to know who of you were actually in the previous presentation with Qt components for designers? Okay, but who of you have heard of Qt components? Okay, so most of you, and because I won't go on the very general thing, I will try to go a bit more specific, and I will try to do some coding. And so these are basically the things we're going to cover today. We'll start with a very brief introduction, really brief, for those who may not have the entire picture on Qt components. Then I'll show you some ways to do page navigation using the Qt components. That is usually something that is very useful for developers. After that, I'll also show you how to create these components dynamically in memory, and how to do I'll show you some examples on how to use ModelView architecture. Finally, we'll end up with some do's and don'ts, some good practices that we can follow. So I will be presenting a lot of code here. If you have any problem with the fonts or the size of the font, just let me know. And we may leave the questions for the end, so because we sort of have a tight schedule, but just if you have the questions, maybe write them down, and at the end we can discuss it. So just starting with a brief summary of what Qt components are. So I have divided this. This is not like an official division of the thing, but this is how I see it, like in 2 kinds of components. So the first one is these components that will make your application beautiful, and these are the components that you might be expecting. It's like the kind of components that make sense, that the switch, radio button, checkbox, progress bar, all these kind of elements that you need when you create a form or you create some sort of page that requires an interaction in your application. And well, they have been designed in a way that they look nice, that they have smooth transitions, that they look good. But we also have some components that go beyond that and just will make your application wonderful. So these are the components that we're going to cover today. So it's not, like not only switches, checkbox, things like that, but are these elements that ensure navigation in your application, ensure that you have a good use of the memory. Like, for instance, here you see in the slide, it's marked on green. We have a window component. So this component, for instance, allow us to have a window with native UI. So it will match native UI. It doesn't matter where it is running. In this case, we will be talking specifically about Symbian and Meego UIs. And we also have some other components. Like you can see on the top part of the window, we have a status bar. This status bar will allow us to have some information while we have our application displayed. Because users want to see the hour while they are, running the application. Users, people don't use any watches anymore. Okay? So they want to see the hour there, or they want to see some status information. We also have elements like tab bar that are displaying some specific elements, like the toolbar or whatever we put in the middle. So that was the quick summary about what Qt components are. And now let's see how we can actually use navigation between the components. So for navigation, there are many different ways that we can implement navigation. So we're going to try to explore several of them. One of them is, as you can just see it here, it's what we call a stack-based navigation or drill-down navigation, and it's when we have a hierarchy of pages. And when we select one page, we start like going deeper and deeper and deeper in the hierarchy. And for this, we use two components that are the page tag, that is the general container of the pages, and of course, the pages. So the page tag will always display the page that is on the top of the page tag. So for that, let me just show you an example. So this is just my project, and we're gonna create a new QML file. And we're gonna call it demo page tag. Okay. Before we go to this, is the phone okay for all the guys who are in the back? Yes? Okay. Well, before we go to this page tag, which is going to be the window where we're gonna put different pages, let me show you a couple of pages that I have here already created. So this is how a page actually looks like. You see that the component is a page component, and I have here a list view, and in this list view I am presenting just a set of images and some text, different items that you can start just like scrolling in a list. I'm using a model here. We will go to that later. What I want you to see in this page example is this tools property. This is a property of a page. And this tools defines a toolbar layout, which has a couple buttons. So these buttons they belong to the page, and they will insert later in a toolbar. So this is just like a whole set of buttons that a page contains that later will insert in some toolbar. And I also have a signal here in this page, and it will be triggered when one of the elements on the list is selected, and it will send information about the source of the image and the description of the image. And after this page, we will also have a details page. So in this page, it's also a page, it's a second page. We have a clickable area. And here we have an image and a text. And it will just basically display the image, a larger image, and a description that comes from the other page. And it also has a tools property here defined, and here also has two tool buttons. Now let's go back to our demo page tag. So now for acute components, the first thing that we need to do is, let me just delete this because we don't need it, is define the import for the gallery we're going to use. We're going to use the Symbian. We can also use the Meego. And we're going to define this window element. So you see that this window has a status bar and a toolbar. I actually added this snippet because it's pretty easy to add some snippets in the Qt Creator. So the status bar, we just put it on the top. The toolbar, we put it on the bottom. And in the middle, we're going to add a page tag, which is the component that is going to change pages. It's right here. And you see that this page tag has been anchored to the lower part of the status bar and the upper side of the toolbar. And it also has a toolbar property that I just put, like a reference to this toolbar here. And now we need to have a couple pages. So we're going to add these pages here as items. So we had something called this list page, which is what I just showed you with the list. And we're going to give it an ID. Very creative. Let's put some order here. And we also have a details page, which is the second page that we had. And here it is. Now, remember we had signal called on items change on item selected, and here we're going to put a couple lines of code. So the first thing we're going to do is just pass on the parameters that come from this page to the second page. So we had one parameter called image source that came in this name, and the other one was called description. Okay, and now this is how we use the page tag. So the page tag has three main methods. It's push to add pages in the page tag, pop to remove pages from the page tag, and we have replace to just basically to replace the one that is on the top. So whenever the window is loaded into memory, we do it in this way. We use this component element, and we have this page tag. Then we're gonna push this list, which is our first page, and then whenever we click or we select one of the elements, we will push the other one. So we will just push the details page. And there was also one signal on the details page that is triggered when the back button is pressed, and we're gonna just pop the element from the page tag. And then we just need to put it here so it runs. And we can run it. So here it is. So one thing to notice here is that how both pages were created when I just started the application. So we see it here in the console. You see that I just put some elements there to identify when one of the items was created. And then you see that I have the page here, which is a list view. It has some nice and smooth, some smooth transitions here. And then when I select one of them, it changes to the other one. Now, let's notice something, is that whenever I push something in the page tag, it actually produces some smooth transition to the second page. This is done by the Qt components itself. I didn't put anything special there. And now also notice that both pages have different toolbars, because each page has a different set of tool buttons, but they plug into the same toolbar area. So this toolbar is just like a general element where tool buttons are rendered. Okay, that's one way to do navigation. Moving on, there is also what we call tab-based navigation. And in this case, we don't have a hierarchy of elements. They all live at the same level, as you may see here. And for that, we have these components. So we have a tab bar that contains a bunch of tab buttons where we can just put them together. And we have in the middle something, it's right here. It's called a tab group, and it's where the pages are going to be displayed. In the other one, it was the page tag, where the pages were going to be displayed. Here is something called a tab group. So just to see how that works, we're going to create also a new QML file, and it's going to be called demo tab window. Let me close this. Again, we'll just import the com, and we can delete this, and let's just use our window. Now we're going to add a tab bar on the top, and we're going to add a tab group here where we are going to put a couple pages. So now the pages have to live here in the tab group. So let me just put one here. We're going to use 3 pages here. Now, for this example, I have prepared a whole bunch of components inside some items, so we put them inside this page. So let me just show you that quickly. So for instance, I have this. It's called settings items 1. It's just an item that contains a whole bunch of Qt components. In this case, it's some checkbox, and I also have this settings items 2, which is a component with, it is an item that contains some text area sliders, some text, and this other one that is also has some text and switches. So I can use them here in my pages. So let's go to the tab window again. So in each one, I'm just gonna add the components there. So I'm gonna call them this page 1, page 2, and this is going to be page 3, again with the. So we have now the pages. Let's just need this. We have now the pages. Now we need to add the tab buttons. So the tab buttons, we put them inside the tab bar layout, so they are displayed in a correct position on the screen. And let me just add 1, 2, 3 tab buttons. Now the tab buttons have a very interesting property called tab. And in this tab, you actually reference a page. And it will just, the tab bar will make sure, of the tab button will make sure just to render the page that is being selected at that moment. And the other ones are going to be hidden. So let me just show you the example that maybe it's easier to see it there. And that's all I need. Now let's see this main, and here we now going to use demo tab window. And here we have it. So now see that, again, the 3 pages were created when the application was just started, because they were just defining the QML, and then we just, they were declaring the QML file from the very beginning. But now see also that I have these 3 tab buttons here, but when I select the tab 2 button, then the second page gets displayed. And this is done automatically by the Qt components, which is pretty good. And also see the transitions are very good. You know, they are smooth. And then, well, of course, these pages just remain all the time there. So if I change something and I go back, I see the same status right there. Okay, so this was another way of navigating. Let's move on. Another way of navigating is using the toolbar. Again, we're continuing with parallel navigation. One way is using the toolbar. This works when we only have 2 pages. So we don't need to maybe put some tabs on the top because it's going to take some space. We may just put some buttons on the toolbar. And let me just show you an example with that. So for this, I'm just going to show you what I have here. Let's run it. It's called Parallel Navigation with Toolbar. Let me just reference it here. So this is the way it looks. So whenever I just click the other one, it changes. But one thing that we can actually see here is how parentage works using the page tag. Now I'm using a page tag. And in the page tag, I'm replacing the page. So it always changes to a different page. And this page is being visible. So let's just see the code to understand how parentage works here in the page tag. So it's parallel navigation with toolbar. Let me just close this for a while. And see, so both pages have been defined here. So they are loaded from the very beginning. But let me ask you one question. Who is the parent of these pages? Who's the parent of these pages? Yeah, the window, correct. Did you get an A9 this morning? Yeah? Oh, okay, answer. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any eyes to give away for questions, but but yeah, the parent here is the window. But whenever we push something in the page tag, it gets reparented, and now its parent is going to be the page tag. So we see it on the trace. I just close the trace. Let me just, we see it here in the output. So these two pages were created, and then I just select the second one, and let's see the output here. So what we can see there is that the page 2 gets reparented. Now the page tag is the parent. I'm just printing the parent. And then the page 2 gets visible because the page tag handles who is visible and who is not. And the second page gets hidden at that moment, and it gets reparented to the window because it was on the page tag. And when I put the other one, when I replace the other one, well, then it happens with the other page as well. And now the other way to do some cool navigation, parallel navigation, is use a flippable instead of using a toolbar. It also works when we only have 2 screens. Let me show you the example here. Now I have this parallel navigation with flippable. Let me just run it so you see it working first. So you see here that now I have a flip page button, and when I just click it, it does some pretty cool stuff. So a flippable basically has 2 elements, one that displays on the front and the other one that is right on the back. So when I just tell it to flip, it will change and make a smooth transition between them. And I just can use, you can use this kind of transition, this kind of animation, or you can also use it like upside down, whatever you want here. Just sometimes you need to make sure that the page on the back is displayed correctly, because sometimes it gives you like a mirror. It will be presented like in a mirror way, but that's something that you can actually fix easily. Now you see that this button here has been nicely laid out. And here I just put some text, and it will actually put this nice rounding button at this rounding area around this text. So it was also doing it in the previous one. I only put the icons, and it actually put itself this rounding area around the buttons on the toolbar. Okay, so that was about navigation. Now, the one bad thing that we have been doing here is that we have been loading all the pages when the application starts. And that's very bad for memory consumption in our application. So if we have a whole bunch of pages, we don't want to load in on the very beginning. We just want them to load in as we need them. So for this thing, we need to load in dynamically. And there are basically 2 ways to create the components dynamically. The first one is create the components yourself. And for this, you do it in this way. You use first Qt create component to load the component in memory, but after that you have to instantiate it, use it component, create object, and specify who is the parent. Now, this parent here, it's only for laying out purposes. It's not for creation destruction. So you have to make sure that you destruct the components yourself. That's why I highlighted on the bottom. So let me just show you an example on how this works. So I also have a small example here called dynamic page. So in this, I have again a window with a toolbar and a status bar, and in the page, I just have defined a page in the middle. I didn't use a page tag or a tab group here. Just put the page. You can do it. Just have to make sure that when you use a page directly, you set the visible flag to true, because by default they are hidden. You know, the page tag and the tab group, they manage that. They manage how the pages are displayed, but in this case, I have to do it myself. So in this page, I have defined a mouse area. So whenever I click this mouse area, I'm calling this load page function, and it's right here. So we have a function called load page, and I do first need to create the component. So I call this Qt create components, and I give it a QML file. And then at this moment, this file is going to be loaded in memory. Now, whenever this component is ready, I can create the object, and I can specify who is going to be the parent. And the parent here is going to be the page. And now, one important thing to understand when we create components dynamically is that there is no property binding here. So in order to give them or pass some information to this component that we are creating, we need to use something called a property map, and we do it at construction. Here you see that when I create it, I just pass it a couple properties. So let's just run it and see how it works. So it's dynamic page. And run it. Okay, so we don't see anything. That's what we want. But when we click on it, then we create actually all these elements that are inside, and we create it also in memory. Now this one has something is that I did not check if it was created or not. So if I just click on it, I'm creating a lot of these in memory. Yeah, but that's something that you have to check. And now, if I want to destroy them, here I'm creating a lot of instances of this element. So if I want to destroy, I have to do it myself. You know, it works. For instance, if you are creating a small game, a simple game with JavaScript, then you can create these elements at runtime, and then you have to destroy them manually. Be careful with that, please. Let me just continue. So that's the first way. It's not my favorite. This one is better, when you make other components to create the components for you. In this case, you don't have to worry about creation destruction. You just use them, and they work nicely. So I'm going to show two ways to do it. We have more. You see the number 3 here is that when we can use some elements that support that. The first one is creating dynamically using a page tag. So let me just show you an example. So let's go back to our page tag example. Demo page tag. You remember this one, correctly? So now I'm just going to call it differently. I'm going to call it demo dynamic page tag. Okay. And how it works is that we use this element called component as well. I know it's a bit, you know, it's a lot of component. And this element is called component. I did not create it, but it's right there. So now the pages, instead of creating the pages, sorry, I should have started with this one. Instead of creating the pages here, we're going to put the pages inside this component element. And this will make sure that these pages are not loaded until we actually need them. So, and this is when we push them into the page tag. So let me just change this here, and this is the way they look. And we do the same with the second page, which was this details page. We put it inside a component element, and we just remove the ID and put it and reference it to the component. Okay, so whenever we push something, some component into the page tag, like here when the window is loaded, that component is created. And when we pop it, that component is deleted from memory. So let's just run it here and see how it works. And is this dynamic page tag. So let's just run it. And it's right here. So you see that now only one of them was created, not the 2 pages. Sorry. Now you see only one is created. You see it in purple. And when I click on one of them, ta-da. Well, you see, I have an error, yeah? But don't worry, I know what the error is. So you can actually tell me what the error is here. So we go to the demo dynamic page tag, and let's see the list. So what is the error there? Component, where push, here, details. Okay, that's the error, but why? Why is giving us the error right there?
Because your component is now leaving.
Pardon, excuse me?
We're pushing and popping onto the component now.
Yeah, we're pushing a component. Here, you see details now is a component, correct. But what about this details page? Has it been created? Yeah? That's the error, because it's only created when we push it in the page tag. And at this moment, we have not pushed it, so it's not living. Now it's a bit more complicated, because when we create the components dynamically, there is no property binding, so we cannot use this, but we can actually pass this information in a property map. So now, instead of just doing this, I'll just copy paste something here. So this is the property map. Now and the other one, I'm just making this line long, I'm sorry. And I'll have to remove this because this cannot be done here. It has to be passed on construction. Now, there's one thing that when I create pages dynamically and I am referencing some folder inside my Qt application, I have to use this Qt resolve URL, and this is what I'm passing now. So now we can test it. And if I didn't do anything stupid, it's going to run. So here it is again, and when I click on one of them, voila, so it works. So you see that the page was created when I push it into the page tag, which is pretty good. I had this smooth transition when I push it there, and when I push the back button, you also see that the details page gets destroyed as well, which is pretty good for us as well when we are doing some memory management. So that was the first way to do it. I mean, with a page tag, it's pretty good. You don't have to worry about that. Just you can have the pages in different QML files and just push them into the page tag, and they will be created. Pop them, they will be destroyed. Now you can also use a loader element. So this loader element is different to the component. I have a question there.
Is the creation of the page a synchronous operation? Which means just afterwards the push operation, I can refer to the object is actually created, so I can call methods on it or not?
Yeah, you can use it here in the component. I mean, you can use it inside this component element. So you see that I'm actually, this on item selected is a signal of this element, you know? Because it's now live. So when it's living, you can do things inside. Yeah. Now what you cannot do is like trying to reference the method of this component outside this component element, because it may not know that what it is.
Okay. My question was not clear. Can I refer? I'm pushing the details over there.
Yes.
Can I refer to details just after the line after I push it, or not?
Well, yeah, you can do it. What you cannot do is like property binding.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it will reduce your possibility. So what I did here is passing these parameters as a map, as a property map.
Okay.
Yeah, it has some disadvantages, of course, but everything here is created dynamically, and it exists only after a certain time. So you cannot treat them as a normal component.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now, I was mentioning the loader element. Let's go back here. So the loader element is a bit different to the component element, and this loaded element, it has a very important property called source. And this source property refers to some QML file. And when you change the source, what it will do is create this component that you just referenced and remove the last one. So for instance, I have the source was not referencing to anything. When I set it, source, you bind it to some file, then it will create a component. And then you change the source to some different QML file. So we'll destroy the first one and create the second one. And let me show you an example of that using a tab page. So I'm not going to write it from the scratch. I have my dynamic tab window here. If I don't have it here, I have it here. So this is how it looks like. So now the pages have this element called loader. At this very moment, this loader does not have any source, you see. So it's empty. So it's not allocated memory for anything. It's just containing the whole page. And it's the same thing for the second page and the third page. Now, what we do is when a tab button is pressed, we actually change the source of this loader element on each page. So the element is loaded in memory. And now, the difference here is that if you click the tab several times, the source is not changing. It's the same one. So it's not created several times. It's just created one time. And let me show you this on. Let me just show you how it works. So it's called dynamic tabs window. Let's just run it. And I have it here. So you see that I only loaded the first one when the page was created. Only the first element was created. When I tap on the second one, then the second one is created. And now the other one. So what I did here was only presenting some part of the information to the user. If he needs more, I load more, and I keep it in memory. I'm not deleting it here. And this is just in case that the user only wants to see the first one, the first page, and he may never go to the other one. So why will I put it in memory? Why will I put everything in memory at that time? So I may just do this. So also you notice here that I loaded the page, but what I did not load was the content of the page. So it's going to save me some time as well. So the page is there, and when I click on one of the tab buttons, I just create all the components that are inside the page. That's the way I'm doing it here. And it works nicely. You see that also if I go from one to the other one, it just stays because it's the same component in memory. I'm not creating several components at different times. And, well, you also can try to experiment some of the other ones that actually support memory, dynamic memory allocation. Let's move on with using ModelView architecture. So who of you guys are familiar with the ModelView architecture on Qt? Well, almost everybody. So I'm not going into details because it can take me some time. This could be a complete separate session, but you know how it works. Basically, it's for those who don't know how it works. The model, it's something that exposes data to something that is going to render, which is the view. And we use the delegate to just place the elements where we actually want. So we use these three concepts: the model providing the data, the view that organizes the data in some way, in some master way, and delegate that will just display the elements in a specific order inside this view. So the very good thing is that we can use different views with the same model. Or, well, here is the other way, yeah? But now, in my example, you already saw the list view that I was presenting. I also have, that was in the grid page. That was the page that was actually implementing this list view. That is a view that was bound to this Nokia devices model. We can see this Nokia devices model. Well, it's not here. It's here. It's nothing but a list model. So it has some, a bunch of list elements. I can also use a XML list model, which is pretty good, but I'm not using it here because I don't want to rely on the network. Yeah, I have some pretty scary stories about that. And now I'm using it here in this list page. This is the one that you already saw. I also have one grid page. Now the grid page uses the same model. It just renders things differently. And now if we go to if you remember our page tag window, demo page tag, that may not be here because I replaced it. So it's this demo page tag. Now, instead of using this list page, I'm just going to use a grid page. And we can use it. Again, it was called our demo page tag. And run it. So now it displays differently. You see? So this model view architecture is pretty nice when you are using different layouts. When, for instance, the application is in portrait, you can use like the list view normal way. And when the application is in landscape, you can use this grid layout, this grid page, something like that. So at the end, it's just the same thing, but it just displays in a different way. And just moving on. So this is something you may want to try. And more views, like the views that come with QML, they all implement dynamic memory allocation. So they don't, they don't put everything in memory. They try to use the memory wisely. And finally, let's just have a couple do's and don'ts. So the first one is, it's a really, really good practice to load the components dynamically because you're going to save a good amount of memory there. So try to do this all the time. The second one is you can use this property called cache buffer in the list view or grid view in any of these views. So what it does actually is that when you're going to render in the page, it also renders something on the top and something on the bottom. So when you start like going up or down, the transition is smoother. It has some cost on memory because it's going to render something when the delegates are created in the page. Some delegates on the top and some delegates on the bottom are also going to be created, but it's going to be good for short lists. When the list is really long, then you don't want to use this. It has no benefit at all. And keep the QML to a minimum in the delegate when you're using the model view architecture, because you know that these delegates are created a lot, so it will just delay or have some impact on performance. And the other one is block user actions during page transition. So you know that when a page is switching and maybe you have some big mouse area on your application, and then you may be able to click on it while the page is doing the transition. So you can do that using this page tag busy property. And so when it's busy, when it's changing the pages, some of the elements that you have on the page are not enabled. So you can use this. That's a very good practice. And so don'ts is, the first one is the general rule of programming. You know, it's don't be a mess. That's it. So don't use a huge QML file per application. Try to, you know, use several pages in different QML files. That's a very good practice. And try to load them dynamically. Avoid the parent trap when replacing pages in a page tag. So I have an example here to show you what that is. And let me see if you see the problem. Is this one. So let me just show you here easily. So we have a window that have a page tag, and we have a component element. So whenever we push this component element here, this page one is created. We're clear on that? Are we? Or no? Yeah? Perfect. Now, in this page, we have a mouse area. And when this mouse area is clicked, then we will be creating this new component called, we will be creating this from this file called this page QML, and we will replace the element on the page tag. So let me ask you one question. Who is the parent of this new component created here? Who is the parent? It's the page, yeah? So now remember what happens when you pop something out of the page and you're using dynamic memory allocation? Exactly, that's what happens, yeah? So now, what's the problem here? Can you see it? Not clearly yet? So when I click it, yeah, please. Okay, the parent is destroyed. The parent is destroyed when I replace the page, correctly. So first, the element is created because, you know, whatever is inside the parentheses is created first. Then the parent is destroyed. And since the parent is destroyed, then the children is destroyed. So the brand new component that was created gets destroyed at the same, right after it was created. And then we're just basically not pushing anything into the page tag. And something weird may happen. Yeah, so this is like the parent trap in a page tag. Is it clear? Yep, good. So another don't is don't use intensive use or resizing. Usually when you're scaling images is what actually uses a lot of memory here. So one very good practice is to use this source size property on the image. It will just scale down the image and put that size on memory. And but if you change the source size, it will actually reload everything on the image and on memory. But it's very good to use this one instead of, you know, like fixing the width and the height all the time. And let me, before the question, just can we please switch to the telephone? Oh, you have my code. I need to protect this phone now. So, just for you to see, I actually had to change the code because this is going to be streamed to a lot of people. So, I'll be in trouble. So, just for you to see that we actually eat our own dog food, we have this. This is the latest version of the Nokia Ovi store. It uses Qt Quick, and it uses the Qt components. So, you see that this has been implemented in, this is a list view, and whenever we just use some other element, did you see the transition there? Let me just, you see, it's using a page tag, using a nice transition. And it's loading the elements dynamically, of course. Another one, another good example is the Qt DevDays app. It also uses the Qt components. So when I put something here and then I go back, you see the transition that goes in the page tag. So It's a very good way of saving a lot of time and also doing things in a native way. Because if you use the Qt components, you don't have to worry about, like trying to mimic the native, because the components will do that for you. So you will save a lot of time. You don't have to implement the buttons. You just use them and save a lot of time and have fun coding. So now we can have some questions if you want. Yes, I have one question here. Can you wait for the microphone, please? You can change to the presentation here. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I want to ask you. Maybe it is difficult. Maybe it is out of agenda. But what about flickable pages? So you have a stack of pages, and you change the pages by flick, and transitions goes.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, yeah, I understand.
Can it be done?
Yeah, so you're asking me what about flickable pages. I show you one example here. Yeah, so I was using a flickable element. Let me show it here. Let's go back to that one. You said flickable, not, yes. Yeah. So for that, we have this component called, this is an element called, I have it in this demo details page. You see that I have a flickable element inside the page. So if I don't have this, whenever you render the page, it's very still. You cannot move it up or down. But if I use all the elements inside a flickable, then you can do it, like these very bouncy animations from top to bottom, and or you can also do it on the other way. This is vertical, but you can also do it horizontally. So just put inside this flickable element, and then you have.
Can I put the pages inside flickable?
You can put whatever inside a flickable as well. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Just that whenever you use a page tag, then you need to push pages in the page tag and no flickable, because it will just go and look for the visible property, for instance, and make it, and show it or hide it. Or hide it, sorry. Any other question? I have a question here.
Just out of interest, if you can flick it horizontally and vertically, can you flick it diagonally?
You can flick it, sorry?
If you can flick it horizontally and vertically, can you flick it diagonally as well?
Well, I will not say no. I mean, I have not tested that, like doing it both ways. I think, yes. I mean, if you see this Qt Developer Days application, you can actually flick it diagonally as well. So I will say, yes, you can do it. Mm-hmm. We have another question there.
So the library is for Symbian. Is it also available for other platforms?
Okay, good question. The question is if it is also available for other platforms. So for Meego, it's also available. You see that when I was creating the components, I defined something with Symbian. There is also components for Meego, and they are very similar. There's a couple things that are different because they are different platforms and they behave a bit different. So people is not expecting exactly the same thing. So we have like a whole bunch of common components and some components that actually are different for each platform. We try them to be, as not that many, be as very few components that do that. So we have Meego, we have also Symbian, and there is some project for Qt components on desktop. There was some talk about that before. It's although a bit separate project that it's still ongoing, but there is also for that. And for the other ones, I can say there is nothing officially, but you know that the developer community is very active and they are already trying to do some hacking there, or not hacking, but trying to port things.
Okay. And another thing, so you have a menu system.
Sorry, we have
so this is a kind of menu system.
Mm-hmm. Menu system.
Yeah. How is the binding to QML properties or C++ properties? from the control elements.
Yeah. Well, how's the binding from QML properties to C++ properties? So
No, from the controls, because you have a set of controls.
Yeah.
Checkbox.
you mean these
edit.
components, new
Yeah.
components?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So one thing is that these components are not meant to be like extended. You can use them, of course, in a normal way. You can just use the Q declarative libraries just as if you were using anything else on QML. Yeah, so just normal, nothing different. If you want to extend it, it's like these are meant to mimic or follow the native UI. So it's not something that we'll recommend to do it because that's why they are created, you know, to be native. Yep.
Okay.
Any other question? No? Okay, so thanks a lot, guys. That was it. And